Okay, let's talk about Waterbury's. There's a particular reason why I chose Waterbury's drugstores for this week's pod, and you'll see it in one of the photos that's coming up in just a second. But Waterbury's drugstores are a Canal Street icon with the two on Canal, the classic, everybody remembers the Canal and Camp, and then the store down at Canal and South Rampart Street, and then of course it's a chain. There's other parts to the story, so let's get into it. Of course, I am Edward Brandley, your NOLA history guy. Uh, I was talking to someone today that said, "Yeah, I remember you from Facebook a long time ago," and a lot of my Edward Brandley stuff has kind of gotten a little more personal and friends only and everything. But NOLA History Guy is still out there on all social media, folks. And not only that, but of course, we have our Patreon, and we ask you to please consider supporting NOLA History Guy financially. And you'll see on the show page, we've got some suggestions for that. But the most important one of that group is to go to Patreon, sign up for Patreon, and become a supporter of NOLA History Guy and at the $1 a month or $5 a month level. Um, that's basically the idea. You go out to NOLA History, go out to patreon.com/NOLA History Guy. That's what you see there when you get there. You see me, some of my books, that kind of thing. And then it's going to ask you, do you want to join? And you can go ahead and join. It says join for free, and then you pick the level you want. And if you don't drop it in 7 days, well, there you go. You sign up either at the $1 level or the $5 level. And if you sign up at the $1 level, we give our supporters a lot of thanks and a lot of love and an extra blog post or two a month, particularly a good bit of train content that we're adding to it that is for Patreon supporters. At the $5 level, you get a second podcast a week that usually we take a photo of something and then do a good old classic photo unpack deep dive of one thing, just like old school podcasting. And plus that you get my attention in terms of the Discord channel, and you got a suggestion. We give priority to anything that you want to talk about and cover if you're a Patreon patron. In addition to that, please consider buying my books. Yeah, we'll be pushing this in the second half of the year leading up to the holidays, of course. There's the five books from Arcadia Publishing, the four Images of America. That's the brownish sepia tone colored books. Maison Blanche Department Stores, Mr. Bingle's Chapter 3. Legendary Locals of New Orleans is a who's who of a whole bunch of people spanning the history of the city back to 1718. And then our History Press book on the story of Krause, the New Orleans value store. Krause department store opened in 1903 and closed in 1997. And this is a great book giving you the history of Krause department store, as well as a whole bunch of stuff on Canal Street, the Canal Street, Storyville, Jewish retailing in the Jewish community. You'll really enjoy the book. Let's talk about Waterbury's. The One of the inspirations for doing the pod this week is actually the Friends of the Cabildo Walking Tour Guides, because my friend Craig Ernst had a FOC continuing education event on Canal Street last week, and that's kind of something I encountered on as I was walking to that, gave me the inspiration here. So shout out to my tour guide colleagues, and here's some talking points if you're getting into Waterbury's. The whole thing starts with Waterbury Chemical Company, who are a manufacturer of patent medicines, and they had a plant. New Orleans was one of their cities, as it were. They Waterbury Chemical decides to go open a retail store, and that's where Waterbury's number one comes from, is the store on Canal and Camp Street, which opens in 1930. Waterbury's corporate sells the store out to a local a local who is an employee of Waterbury Chemical named Avit Kansian. He was a pharmacist. He buys Waterbury's number one from the company in 1931. He starts getting really, starts moving along here, starts getting aggressive with everything, opens the second store down on Canal and South Rampart, then later opens store number three on Dryads and Uterp. They, the company Cancian passes away, but the company's still considering expansion into the 1950s. They look at a Metairie possibility that would have been Waterbury's number four, but it doesn't materialize. They leave number four and go to number five, and that store does materialize on Harrison Avenue by St. Dominic. That store, basically everything closes down by the 1970s except for Waterbury's number one, which eventually closes because of the acquisition of the block of Canal Street between Camp and Magazine. And a major chunk of that block, of course, becomes the Sheraton Hotel, and that shuts down the drugstore at the corner of Canal and Camp. So here's the story. Remember, I told you there was kind of a inspiration for this. So I'm going to a continuing education event for NOLA History Guy. As NOLA History Guy for the Friends of the Cabildo tour guides. My friend Craig set this all up. I take the streetcar down to Canal and Camp, get off the streetcar there. When I look up, I see this really neat artwork that's part of the Celebrate Canal effort on the corner of Canal and Camp. That is part of the Sheraton Hotel Canal Street. And of course, they have a ballroom and convention area there on the corner that they expanded out after completing construction of the hotel when they finally acquired Waterbury's drugstore. Well, Waterbury's drugstore closed. So of course, there's a lot of fond memories people have of that and Old Canal Street. Going back, gosh, it's 1984, the store closed for literally 40 years now since Waterbury's has been gone. And one of the themes of the artwork that Celebrate Canal is putting up around the street is our favorite miscreant dog from last year's Scrim. And Scrim, of course, was a rescue dog that got loose from the rescue. Then he was literally living out on the streets, and we had months of Scrim sightings in anything from uptown to mid city to Old Metairie. Somebody said they thought they saw him even out in Kenner, that kind of thing. They recaptured Scrim, but then he staged another jailbreak from the rescue. But now for the last 4 or 5 months, Scrim's been just a sweet good boy as a house dog, kind of an inside. Now he's outside, able to go outside with a harness and a leash and everything, and he's just having a lot of fun. So here's Scrim, and from a book that was written about his story, his buddy Tiffany, who they are having a date at Waterbury's. And of course, what are they sharing? They're sharing a nectar soda. And the motorcycle in the background is a theme of the artwork around Canal Street, that you can take a scooter or a motorcycle up and down and travel and see everything. For Waterbury's, that's particularly on point, and I was kind of chuckling about that when I saw Scrim and Tiffany here, because Waterbury's made a big deal out of they didn't just have delivery, they had motorcycle delivery. So just like you've got your bicycle messengers now, going back to in the 30s, Waterbury's would always get you your prescriptions to your house via motorcycle if you didn't come pick it up yourself. So that was great. So this artwork's up there for now during the Celebrate Canal period. So if you get down to Canal and Camp, like I said, take the streetcar, get off at Camp Street, you look up, you'll see it right there. It's really a hoot. All right, let's get into the history here of how Waterbury's comes to Canal Street. As we said, Waterbury Chemical Company, and you can see it there on that illustration of a bottle of Waterbury's compound, which was what at the time these were known as patent medicines. Patent medicines are anything from here Waterbury's compound to Boudreaux's butt paste to of course, Hadacol. Most of the patent medicines were some kind of combination of vitamins or what would now be called in the health community would be unlicensed supplements, vitamins or uh, uh, various types of supplements that you would have. Waterbury's compound is based on cod liver oil, and it was cod liver oil plus vitamins. The vitamins and made the tonic. That's what gave Waterbury's the value add to the product. So they sold their tonic, and you could see best cures for coughs and colds at economic prices. And this is an ad from 1929 selling the compound. And you'll notice it's interesting. It's the ad is for Economical Drugstore, which is at Canal and approaching Rampart on the French Quarter side. So it's got an odd number on address. So that means it's on the downtown or French Quarter side of Canal Street. Economical Drugs was there at the time. One of these days we'll do something bigger on the 1000 block. So Waterbury's is a national / international company. International because they manufactured the compound up in Toronto as well. And they had a plant here down on Gravier Street in what is now the warehouse district to make the compound. And they bottle it up, box it up, send it over to the local stores, ship it out to drugstores in the region. There was a Waterbury's plant here. There was one in Toronto. There's one up in the New York area. There was even one out in San Francisco. So by 1930, the son of the founder of Waterbury's Chemical, who was Carl C. Waterbury, is the son. And you'll see him also referred to as C.C. Waterbury. I'm sure they called him C.C. In business and that kind of thing. C.C. pitches his dad and the company. We should move into, in addition to being a product manufacturer, we should move into the retail side of selling the patent medicine along with all the other stuff that is sold at a drugstore. So Waterbury leases the building at a two-story building at the corner of Canal and Camp. And he leases that in February 1930, which is interesting because he leases it from Leo Feldman, who is a nephew of old Leon Feldman of Feldman's department store and the guy who built the Krause department store building and all kind of Jewish retailing Canal Street stuff that gets all over the Krause and MB books. But anyway, Waterbury leases the Feldmans buy the building, and Waterbury leases the building from them in February of 1930. He gets to go ahead to do this project, and they start spending the money to flesh out the interior, and they open the drugstore in April of 1930. And you can see here is an ad in the Picayune from August of 1930 talking about the busy corner and all of the stuff that was in and around the corner of Canal and Camp at the different companies. A. Baldwin and Company, which was an appliance manufacturer, Waterbury's Drugs on the corner, the banks like Interstate Trust there, all of these different places there on the busy corner. So you can kind of zoom in now on the top of that ad. You can see A. Baldwin and Company, like say appliance manufacturer, sold you stoves, refrigerators, that kind of thing. White Brothers Jewelers, Rapp's Trunk Store, because Old Man Rapp, that's how he got started, was he bought a steam trunk repair and restoration business, and that became Rapp's Luggage, which expanded out to the suburbs as well. Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company, that was an A&P grocery. Interstate Bank and Trust there on the rather the lake side of Canal and Camp. Baldwin, Waterbury's Drugs across the street, Werlines across the street on Camp, and so that's two of the stores in the 700 block in the Turo buildings. A couple of streetcars there as well as Camp crosses Canal and becomes Charter Street on the French Quarter side. So again, the Waterburys sell out. CC Waterbury opens the retail store, but being the son of the owner and major player in Waterbury Chemical, I get the feeling that CC didn't want to stick with just running a mom and pop drugstore in New Orleans. So he sells the store. He sells Waterbury's drugs to one of his longtime employees, a pharmacist named Avit Cancian. Cancian's originally from Thibodaux. He moves to New Orleans. He ends up settling in Lake Vista when Lake Vista opens up in 1939. He buys the Waterburys at Camp and Canal. He runs with the concept, and that's he opens Waterbury's 2 and Waterbury's 3. He passes away on October 13th of 1955, but Cancian is responsible for most of the expansion and the creation of Waterbury's as we knew it all the way down to its closure in 1984. So Cancian opens Waterbury's. Whoops, that's incorrect. I have 1011 there. That was economical drugs. It's actually, you see it. It's correct in the bullet points there. I'll fix that in the slide. 1036 Canal on the South Rampart Street side. 1011 was on the other side. 1036 Canal is the corner of Canal and South Rampart, right there by Havity Furniture, which is now the International Hostel. On there in the building just before the corner. This is the second Waterbury's location. This was important to Cancian because now his stores bracket both ends of Canal, and that's a big deal from a transit and access point perspective for the CBD, because at Waterbury's number 1 on Canal and Camp, you had the Magazine Street streetcar would come up to Canal Street on Camp. It would make the right turn there and then turn back down Magazine Street for the outbound run back uptown all the way up to Audubon Park. So if you were commuting downtown and you lived uptown, that and the St. Charles streetcar line were two of your ways in. Particular, if you would be on the Magazine streetcar if you lived in the Channel or Jefferson City, or in that area, as the rich people would say, on the other side of the tracks. So yeah, both sides of Canal there, both ends of the CBD. This is an ad for Waterbury's number 2 in October of 1932. That's when the ad was in the paper on Sunday, October 13th, and the Waterburys opened the next day on Monday, October 14th, 1932. So now he's got stores on both sides. Here's a shot of that was, of course, photo in the newspaper is always going to be grainy and a mess. Here's a Frank Studios photo of Canal and South Rampart. You see Havity Furniture was a longtime furniture store. That building was recently converted in recent years to a hostel. It's called the International Hostel. And it's a gorgeous building, still there. Everything's great. Waterbury's on the corner, of course, and you can see he's got a billboard on the roof. and a big billboard on the store itself promoting products that naturally, well, Old Comiskey whiskey, of course, in the liquor department of the drugstore there. So what you see here, of course, is this is Rampart Street coming in that you would the buses, streetcars, etc., would come up to Rampart and then make the right turn here to go up, or make a left turn to head outbound on Canal Street as necessary. Canal and Rampart, we've talked about this before. We'll keep talking about it. Was a major transit hub. Canal and North Rampart is in the middle of everything transit-wise, from being a nexus point for the railroad stations to convergence for a whole bunch of streetcar lines. Later, when everything's converted to buses, it's still a huge point there. This just basically big bus terminal on North Rampart there on the side of the Sanger Theater. Same thing here. Buses coming from uptown, like the Ferret bus, and those lines would come into Canal Street via South Rampart. Interesting side note. I don't know if you noticed this. Look at the delivery truck that's making a delivery to Waterbury's right there on Canal Street, parked really more in front of Haverty's. Look closely what they're bringing. They're bringing wonderful sugary goodness to Waterbury's in the form of Hubig's pies. You gotta love it, right? That's Hubig's pies go back to, I think, 1924. So you get the idea there. Here's a shot of the store on the other side. Now you could see the neon sign initially on the Canal side, but you see it in profile on Canal because the neon sign was designed to attract people coming down Canal on the streetcar or walking. So this is the South Rampart Street side. That bus is pulling up. This is a shot from the 50s, so it's a little bit. No, take that back. This is a shot from the late 30s. You can see it's basically you've got the old White Brothers diesel bus there, so that basically just before the war, you started seeing NOPSI starting converting streetcar lines into buses. Then that got put on hold for World War II, but then continued after the war. So here's the South Rampart Street side. Two big things here. One, you see the Sterling ice cream was the co-op for that, of course, because the soda fountains at Waterbury's 1 and 2 were a big deal. You had a luncheonette that would serve breakfast and lunch, but the big thing there, and you see it up top on either side of the Waterbury's name, open all night. Both Canal Street Waterbury's drugstores were 24-hour operations. And it wasn't just the drug counter, the prescription counter that was open all night. The whole darn store was a 24-hour operation, including the soda fountains. So if you were coming off of a train or you were in hotel and it's late, it's 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, you could still go grab a little something at the soda fountain. Waterbury's number 1 down at Canal and Camp. There's a reason Scrim and Tiffany are on a soda fountain date, splitting a nectar ice cream soda, because the company was the drugstore was famous for that concoction. That was always a grand debate between people who were partial to the nectar soda at K&B versus the one at Waterbury's. But the big deal was down here in the transit nexus, the store was open all night. You came in on a late train, you could pick up what you needed before you went to the hotel, or you could grab a little something here. The other store at Canal and Camp, that 600 block of Canal Street, had the Globe Theater, the Tudor Theater. You had the Sanger around the corner here, just down the street here. Other movie theaters from the Sanger all the way up to the Globe and the Tudor. You're on a date, you go to the 7 o'clock or the 8 o'clock show. It's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. A lot of things have closed down, but not the soda fountain at Waterbury's. You could take your date and go get a soda or an ice cream or whatever it is you were looking for. here's an ad from 1937. 1937 was the centennial of the Times-Picayune newspaper. So you've got basically what Cancian did, and see, Cancian's one of those guys. You notice that he was a very well-known and popular businessman and a community leader. And you'll see that with a lot of people who are popular in the community, they will put their photo up for that facial recognition. I remember that guy from the New Orleans Athletic Club or that kind. That's where I know that guy from. That kind of, oh, he runs the drugstore. Cool. So you can see there's the two, Waterbury's number one and Waterbury's number two, and a big congratulatory note to the Picayune, and in the form of, he putting his money where his mouth is, a big full page ad of centennial sales at and centennial bargains at the two drugstores. Also, later in 1937 is when Cancian decides to expand beyond Canal Street. So he makes the move to take Waterbury's to the Dryads Market corridor. The Dryads Public Market was there at on Dryad Street. It's now the main building of the old public market is now the Southern Food and Beverage Museum. The street at that point is no longer Dryads, running from Melpomene back to Calliope. Dryad Street got renamed in the 80s to for a very well-known and very, very important civil rights activist in New Orleans, a lady named Aretha Castle Haley. And so it's now the building. Well, the building's still there. It's 1632 Aretha Castle Haley instead of Dryads. But of course, you're looking at all the old stuff. Yeah, I go back and forth with this all the time because of historical ads and ad references and everything else. So it's he opens a store at 1632 Dryads at the corner of Euterpe on November 15th, 1937. Here's an ad again. This is an ad from November 14th, the Sunday, and he opens on Monday. This was actually not an ad, but a news article that was an interview with Cancian talking about how he did extensive research. He traveled, all over the country to get ideas from other drugstores to bring back. You know what it sounds like? When it's like I'm looking into this. What it sounds like he did is basically what Jerry Hyman did. Jimmy Hyman did, Leon Hyman's son, with Krause Department Store. Was they were all set to expand out the department store, to expand out Krause's by buying the block behind the store. The war put a hold on that. They didn't do it till 1952. But basically, dad sent son on a big road trip to look at other department stores. Well, that's what Avi Cancian did. He gets on a train and he starts going around to all these other cities and he's taking notes to then modernize, and not only modernize his two existing stores, but then to make store number 3 a very modern, very up-to-date drugstore. So here is a photo of Waterbury's number 3 at Dryads and Euterpe on the in 1939. This is a shot of the uptown side of the street, looking at uptown side of the street, looking at the downtown side, and you see the McCrory store there. You see Waterbury's, and then just a little bit up the street from there, you see the big Kaufmann's department store. The Kaufmann's had been around as a retail family since the Civil War, and again, they expanded. They were, big on Poydras Street and Carondelet. They expanded over to the Dryads Market corridor as well. You remember the co-op sign on Waterbury's number 2 on South Canal and South Rampart, Sterling Ice Cream. You see the neon sign here is co-op again for Waterbury's number 3 with Sterling Ice Cream here as well. The McCrory's there. The drugstore is a bank building on the other side of Euterpe Street. And then just a little bit down, of course, is the four-story Kaufman's building. A lot of this is still there, by the way, just repurposed to a whole bunch of other things in that market corridor. So here is another photo looking downtown, heading now. The photographer is standing at UTERP looking down the street, and you see on the left-hand side, the far left side of the street, you see the onion dome. That's that gold onion dome spire of St. John the Baptist Catholic Church. And then in the distance, kind of in the fuzzy, foggy background there, you see the white cupola of the Hibernia National Bank building. And so that's on the other side. Well, it's on the other side of Calliope Street. The Pontchartrain Expressway, the expressway is not there yet. That's why you don't see any overpasses or anything, obviously. But the streetcar, is basically run. Streetcar tracks. Dryads was a big transit corridor as well because of the public market. You'll notice that the co-op sign on Waterbury's Drugs has shifted from Sterling to Borden's. This is in the 1940s. See a delivery truck parked there for Bacher Brothers Bread, which is another French bread. It's ironic. The French bread the companies who made New Orleans French bread were usually run either by Germans or Sicilians. That's how we end up with Leidenheimers, that kind of thing. It's why Gendouces makes the French bread for all the restaurants. It's welcome to New Orleans. It's just crazy. Cloverland Dairy, there in the that white truck that's making a delivery to the drugstore. Cloverland Dairy was the dairy on South Carrollton Avenue that later gets bought out by Seal Test, and then Seal Test moves out, and that's the building that the front of the building was preserved. It's a U.S. Post Office now over on South Carrollton, but Cloverland Dairy was the go-to big dairy for New Orleans in the 30s and the 40s. One more shot of Dryads and UTERP. This is looking away. So basically, the same photographer turns towards downtown and takes the picture that catches Waterbury's. Now he turns the other way, and we're looking up the street now. We're looking up towards Uptown, and you can see the Dryad streetcar. There's a car in the Dryad's line that is now heading uptown. It's heading outbound to the rest of Uptown. And this was a big deal for the Dryad's Market Corridor and the Dryad's Retail Corner, which is why stores like the Kaufman's moved into the corridor, because not only did you have the public market, but you had a lot of retail space that opened up in this area. It was a very logical move for Cancian to put his drugstore here. Color. Here's a Kodachrome slide from the 1940s of Canal and Camp, and you get a really, really good shot of what the two-story building looked like there at the corner. So that Celebrate Canal artwork, that Where You Are artwork that we saw in the beginning, is sitting in front of the piece of the hotel that replaces Waterbury's Drugs, which was this two-story building here on the corner of Canal and Camp. You can see it's typical drugstore. You got co-op advertising on the neon, big neon on at the street level, so you'd see it. Obviously, the big neon sign above that, so you knew where to get off for the streetcar, or if you're walking, how many blocks you had to go. Just like the space on second floor on the Rampart Street store, because of the height discrepancy between the building next to between the Waterbury's building and the building next to it, they could erect a billboard on the roof of the drugstore. In addition to that, they hired a wall dog to paint a sign on the building next to them, because that height discrepancy allowed you to put up that big painted sign right above your store. Because we mentioned earlier, Avit Kantsian passes away in 1955. There's a changing of the guard in terms of the executive control of Waterbury's, although the two men that take over formally after Kantsian passes had been in charge in various positions for some time. James J. Ford is a Kantsian by marriage. His mama rather take that back. His mama was a Kantsian, and as a matter of fact, Avit Kantsian is married in the Ford family tomb in Greenwood because that's all tied. I think it's New Orleans. Trying to trace genealogy, well, they'll tell you that's just insane. Herbert Simon became Waterbury's number two's first manager. And of course, by 1955, the Waterburys on South Rampart had closed, and so Simon became became a corporate executive, supervising Waterbury's number one, Waterbury's number three, as well as the expansion, working with James J. Ford. By 1956, now Kantsian Avit has passed. The board meets the corporation, designates Ford as president and Simon as vice president, and then their expansion plans kick off from there. Here's an ad to let you know that more stuff is coming from Waterbury's. This is an ad from January of 1957, which even if you didn't, your New Year's ad would always be something looking forward to the future kind of thing. And even throughout your early January ads, you'd be promoting all kinds of stuff. So you can see this is now new Waterbury store is opening, and you see the triad that's now running the store in the now that the founder has passed away. Jimmy Ford is president. Warren Kantsian, who is one of Kantsian's sons, and then Herbert Simon, who, like I said, is a longtime manager working for the company. Round the clock prescription. The fact that everything was open on Canal Street all night was a big deal. Dryad's store number 3 was not. So by the time of this ad in 37, Waterbury's number 2, the Rampart Street store had closed. So by 1937, it was Canal and Camp, store number 1, store number 3 at Dryad's and U-Turn. And they're announcing, they say, we're getting ready to open. We're gonna move out to the Metries. We're gonna move out to Jefferson Parish at Westgate Shopping Center, which was next to the Westgate Drive-In Theater in the 8800 block of Veterans, it was Veterans Highway, now Veterans Boulevard. To give you a geographic point on this in modern day terms, this is where the first Walmart on Veterans was. Basically, you've got the suburban canal, you got an outfall canal, you crossed over the canal, and now it's the BMW dealership there, and that was the drive-in, and then the rest of the drive-in property got paved over and became a strip mall. And that was the first Walmart. Walmart moved a little bit down the street to make a Walmart grocery, and big old Walmart from hell. Now it's Academy Sporting Goods. The Louisiana Purchase buffet restaurant is over there. The Waterburys planned to move here. It didn't pan out, and I don't know why. If anybody is more familiar with the family and knows why this store, why number 4, didn't materialize, but the project didn't happen. It wasn't long, though. January 57, the Westgate project, which they advertised as store number 4, doesn't happen. But by April, these guys are ready for expansion. They're all set for something. They decide they're going to move into Lakeview. So they lease the building at 766 Harrison Avenue, which is Harrison Avenue, almost directly across the street from St. Dominic's Church. It was basically April 11th, 57. They lease out the building. It's a two-story building such that you've got a back like mezzanine, but you can see it's pretty much just a giant ceilinged one-story, big suburban sprawl kind of building, which was exactly what Harrison Avenue was all about. Here's the ad for the big opening. New Orleans' biggest and most complete drug center. Yeah, it was a lot bigger than either of the other two stores. You can see the modern, more suburban styling because you're out in Lakeview. You can architecturally pretty much do whatever you want with this as we go. Now, this is another one that I don't know. I'm inferring on this. And if I'm wrong, somebody please, you've got it, NOLAHistoryGuy.com or at NOLA History Guy. If you know more of the story here, tell me. We'll follow it up because I'm fascinated by Waterbury's opens on April 11th, 1957 on Harrison Avenue. It's store number 5 because they didn't want confusion with the anticipated but didn't materialize store number 4. Opens at 766 Harrison. It barely lasts 4 years, and it closes in 1961. But the store immediately flips into a Katz and Best Off, which makes me wonder if K&B made Waterbury's kind of, I don't want to say an offer they couldn't refuse, but make them an appealing offer to get out of Lakeview so that K&B could expand. One of the things I learned doing computer work for K&B in the late 80s and early 90s was the drugstore business was always an expand or die philosophy. And that is why Sid Bestoff, he didn't decide, well, it was expand or die, but he stopped expanding and he decided to shut it all down and sell out on his own terms. And that was kind of the thing. I can't help but wonder if it, even in the 50s or in the early 60s, if it was still that expand or die, which is why Waterbury's decided to take the money and run on this one. One of the other things in the expand or die type thing, this is a postcard, another Kodachrome shot of Canal and Camp from 1963. And there's a couple of things here. First off, this photo is, we're going to end up with an unpack because there's so much stuff unrelated to Waterbury's here down the street before this becomes the Sheraton and all of that stuff 15 years later. Just fantastic. But in terms of the expansion and the growth or the changes in the drugstore industry, you'll notice that Waterbury's number 1 is now a Rexall drugs chain affiliate. The advertising is weird. You see, like, there must have been a minimum times they had to mention Rexall in ads, and then other times they just say Waterbury's because they had the name recognition and all of that. You notice the Wall Dog ad has been painted over like they're going to, maybe they sold the space on the building. The owners of that building sold the space and it's going to be something else. But of course, the billboard is on the roof of Waterbury's. So naturally, that's still promoting the store. Waterbury stays looking like this for basically, this is 63. So for another 21 years, in 1980 up till 1984 when the store closes. In 1977, Sheraton hotel chain begins to acquire the bulk of the 600 block of Canal Street. This is on the uptown side. And you can see here's a photo in the paper from 1977. You can see the two-story Waterbury building on the corner. Then you've got those other buildings. You see there's some demolition that's taken place. That was the old Tudor Theater and Globe Theater that had since been demolished. Uh, Sheraton Hotel is looking to move in. The piece is an interesting piece about demolitions aren't always necessary. I'm going to write about this piece in a little more detail in a blog post in the coming weeks. So you'll be able to read the whole thing, or you'll be able to click the clip and click the page and see the whole article. That's an artist's conception of what Sheraton was anticipating doing for the Sheraton New Orleans in the 600 block. The argument is demolitions aren't always necessary. You want to build your ballroom or do something, keep the building. Maybe you rip out everything on the inside because you're no longer going to run a drugstore, but keep the building. But the handwriting was on the wall when Sheraton began acquiring the bulk of the 600 block. They also acquired the building here on the corner. They bought the property that was they bought the building that was Waterbury's drugstore. Now, Ford and Cancian before him had a solid lease that said that even if there was a change of ownership of the property, you couldn't evict the tenant. That lease ran out in 1984. So the Sheraton Hotel went forward with everything for the hotel, and they just held out on the corner because there was basically they were incapable of making an offer that Jimmy Ford couldn't refuse, is what it boiled down to. I suspect he probably had a dollar figure, and they just, it's a corp, they just weren't going to meet it. They were willing to wait him out. The lease expired. The lease ended in 1984, and the paper ran a very big piece on Waterbury's closing because the lease was up. The Sheraton owned the property. They were not picking up an option on the lease. So that's Jimmy Ford on the left, and it's done. You can see the look on his face. He's obviously disappointed that his family business is and this iconic store is going. The right-hand picture was also part of the article. That's one of Waterbury's longtime pharmacists, who was Joe Cocchiara. And of course, he's, some of the last prescriptions before you're moving your prescriptions to K&B or Walgreens or wherever the heck else you were moving to, because Waterbury's was going. The building becomes, the drugstore closes. Sheraton exercises the option. They can't immediately demolish the building, though. They ran into preservation. Again, that article pitching, why do you have to demolish the building? Why can't you incorporate the existing architecture into your hotel design? Sheraton didn't want to, but the city council wouldn't give them the historic landmarks district. Nobody would give them the permits to demolish the two-story building. It took them 5 years to make the case to do the demolition, and the two-story Waterbury's building doesn't go down until 1989. Until then, the hotel didn't do anything in the building because that would convince that would make the case for the preservationists. The only thing they did was they opened up a rooftop bar that you could walk in from the hotel, match the height of the rooftop, and go from there. Eventually, of course, the building is demolished. The Waterbury Ballroom, the Waterbury Conference Center, becomes the corner section of the hotel. Now that is the 600 block of, the first half of the 600 block of Canal Street, leading over to the tower for the Sheraton Hotel. And of course, to bring back some of the memories and convince people to that Canal Street is really a fun place to go to, even though the retail has been long gone since the 80s and early 90s, killed by the suburban shopping malls pretty much. Canal Street is still fun. We still celebrate Canal, and that's why Scrim and Tiffany are having their little soda date here on the corner. When you go to the basically you're walking around a lot of the Celebrate Canal stuff, and they talk about windows on Canal. It's a story, a tale. You gotta love it. A tale, TAIL, of two wonder dogs, because it's Scrim and Tiffany, his buddy, and they're basically they're running around. And if you know the story of Scrim, he ran around friggin' everywhere. So it's awesome, right? To do that. The motorcycle is part of it. They use the motorcycle to get around. Like I said, it's specially hits with Waterbury's because of the motorcycle deliveries. This sign is up there on the side of the Sheraton to tell you what the artwork is all about. That you can see that QR code will you can probably scan it here from the PDF and everything, or just go out to Insta, and if you take pictures, tag Canal Street NOLA. And Where Yard Works is the artist cooperative that is producing the various art pieces that are going up on the buildings. You see down at the bottom some of the sponsors that are part of the Celebrate Canal and the Windows on Canal project. That's been a fun little memory. It's like I'm too old to remember the 50s and a lot of this stuff, but I do remember Waterbury's. I can't for the life of me remember going there even in the 70s as a high school kid. But a lot of people have fond memories of the 70s and the early 80s for Waterbury's Drugstore. Older people will still get into the nectar soda debate. Frankly, I was a K&B kid. That's because there was a K&B in Gentilly. There was a K&B in Lakeview where I would take the bus home. And then, of course, I worked at Maison Blanche in Clearview, and right next door to the MB in Clearview Shopping Center was a K&B with the absolute last K&B soda fountain. Uh, Again, thanks for coming down memory lane on Waterbury's with me. I am NOLA History Guy, Ed Branley, at NOLA History Guy on social media. The website, of course, is nolahistoryguy.com. On Patreon, it's patreon.com/NOLA History Guy. Please come support us any way you can, even if it's just come on to the Facebook page or come on to Insta and give us a shout out. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks to the folks who made this parchment parchment paper template for PowerPoint. They licensed it under a Creative Commons share license, so I can keep using it because I just love this. It's so old school, old fashioned, ancient history kind of thing. It is a Creative Commons template. Again, ping me, shoot me a note. You want to use it? I'll send you the template with absolutely no problem, as they used to say at Frankie and Johnny's.